power of assumption, something that I absolutely love, 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 love. So what are you assuming is possible for you at the moment? And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So thank you for being here. You guys are always intentionally working on yourself, and that is incredible. So what are you assuming is possible for you? Not what do you want, not what is your goal, but what do you genuinely believe is possible for you? Because sometimes we have big goals, but underneath those goals, we're carrying very different assumptions. We might say, I want to grow my business, but underneath that might be, I'm not sure I can actually make that much money. Or people probably won't pay me that much. Or maybe I'm just not good enough yet. And those little thoughts can have a much bigger impact than we actually realize. So today isn't it about learning something complicated, it's about noticing what you're already assuming. So think about something you want right now. It could be clients, it could be more money, it could be more confidence, more freedom, more visibility. Maybe it's something completely outside of your business. Now ask yourself, what am I assuming about this? I'm just going to let you sit with that for a moment. So you don't want to come up with the answer right now. Just what comes up. Maybe it's going to be hard. It's going to take a long time. I need to learn more things first. Maybe I'm just not ready. Maybe it's something like other people can do this, but I'm not sure I can. Or maybe your assumption is completely different. It's positive. Maybe it's saying, I'll figure it out. There are people out there who need what I have to offer. I can make this work. And notice how different those two sets of assumptions feel. And that's the power of assumption. What we assume to be true affects the way we actually approach what we're trying to create. So let me give you a simple example. Imagine two people both want to grow their business. They have the same goal. They have access to the same information. They have the same amount of time. But one person assumes getting clients is really difficult. The other assumes there are people who want what I have to offer. I just need to go out and find them. Do you think they will behave in the same way? Probably not. The first person might hesitate. They might avoid selling. They might post occasionally and then decide social media doesn't work. They might give up after a few people say no. The second person might think, okay, that didn't work, but what else can I try? So they have the same goal, but they have different assumptions. So they have different behavior. And eventually they have different results. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story. When I look back at the journey of branch management, when I look back at that journey, I just go, oh my God, I don't know how the hell I did it, but I did it. Anyway, when I ended up with that arborist business, I could have looked at the situation and thought, well, what on earth am I doing? And I'm pretty sure I did that anyway for quite a few years. I don't know how to run this. And believe me, there were, many, many moments, as I said, where I probably did think exactly that, probably for maybe a good 10 years, who knows, because there were certain things that came up all the time where I just questioned, who the hell am I, But I could have made the assumption that I'm not capable of doing this. Instead, I started figuring things out. I asked questions. I learned. I made every mistake under the sun. I kept going, but what I ended up doing was I became very, very truthful when I was speaking to people. I would tell them I wasn't an arborist. I would tell them I didn't know the difference between what that is happening in that tree and something else. I would go and find out and I would come back to them. But I eventually did build that business into a 7-figure business, as you know. And, I know exactly what I did at the beginning. Was it feeling great? Absolutely not. But I didn't need to know everything. I needed to believe that I could figure it out. And that's what I did believe. I always had something or someone that I could go to ask and then figure it out. And that's an assumption that has served me throughout my life. I'll figure it out. I'll ask the questions. I'll find someone who can help me. And then it will happen. So here's the first reflection I'd like you to sit with. So take a moment. Think about something you're currently trying to create. Maybe it's a business goal, a financial goal. Maybe it's something personal. But just ask yourself, what am I assuming about this? Let us know if you're in the chat. Say hi. And then I want you to ask yourself, is that true? Or is it simply what I've become used to believing? So you don't have to change it right now. It's just about noticing what you're assuming, excuse me, what you're assuming about what you're trying to achieve. And is it true? Or is it just something that you have just become used to believing about yourself? Because sometimes the awareness is the beginning of the shift. Okay, so throughout today, some things may come to you because you're asking yourself the question. It may not come to you right this very minute. It may come to you throughout the day, the next day, whatever. Just notice it. Become aware of it. Because when you become aware of things, that's when things start changing, because you will become aware of it and notice it more and then go, this is not serving me. Now let's take one little step further. Think about the thing you've just been reflecting on and imagine, just for a moment, that you knew it was possible. Not that you know exactly how, you just knew it was possible. How would you behave differently? Would you show up differently? Would you have the conversations you've been avoiding? Would you make the offer? Would you put yourself out there a little bit more? Would you stop worrying so much about maybe what other people are thinking? And would you finally make the decision you've been putting off?
So, Shelley, so I'm not really getting probably into the coaching side of it, but my podcasts.
Yep.
So, I believe that that I'm going to be successful with my podcast. I just believe
Awesome.
that.
Yeah.
And I believe that because I've probably done something that I didn't necessarily want to do for decades, necessarily. Whereas this is my niche, and I know some public speaking and interviews and shit like that, but I think I'm a good interviewer. So I believe that it's just the time. Is that what you're kind of asking?
I'm talking about, because when you actually think you believe and when you know you believe sometimes are two different things. So we can tell ourselves, yes, I believe that this is actually happening, or I believe that this is actually what I want. When we know that we're in alignment with what we're doing, that's when we know, when we start seeing the results. So look at the results that you're getting with what you're doing. You're putting your podcasts out, you're getting views, you're getting people seeing it. Are you putting it out there enough on social media? Is there something that's holding you back from putting it out on social media? These are the things that you want to look at, because it's, you assume that people will just see it. And we assume that people will, it'll just land up in their YouTube channel or their Spotify channel, or they'll just see it on social media somewhere. The thing is, when you're putting a podcast out, when you're putting yourself out there as a coach on social media, we often feel like we're doing enough. But in actual fact, what we're doing is quite minimal, because we don't see ourselves as being that person quite yet. So the question is, where is it that you are assuming that either your podcast is being seen by the right people, or it's you're doing enough for it to be seen as like people are seeing it? Does that make more sense to you?
Yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, I've got to get my head around both, basically the whole editing, storage, etc. side of it. No, I understand that, and I didn't even know whether I didn't even check to see if people have viewed my podcasts, and I don't even understand it whole thing anyway. So
That's
I'm
right.
just
We're
persevering
going through
through
that.
you. So, but yes, but yeah. So I actually totally believe that I'm going to be successful. It's just in the meantime, I've got to get my shit around, like editing and stuff. So is
Yeah,
that
that's okay. That's all in the making of who you are becoming. And these things don't just happen overnight. These things happen over time. So it's the repetition of doing the same thing over and over, whether it be uploading a podcast, uploading a YouTube, creating an amazing hook, creating content, whatever it is, it's the repetition of doing that that will then get you into the space of going, okay, well, this is actually who I am. So because there's still some question marks about how to do uploading onto YouTube or Spotify or whatever it
and
is,
everything?
that's the assumptions that you've got at the moment. So work on those. The assumption
Okay.
that, okay, well, this is where I'm sitting at the moment. I'm feeling like I don't actually have the knowledge, but you're actually doing it anyway. Work on that assumption. Work on the assumption that, yeah, it's working effortlessly. I'm putting it out there. I'm doing it. And then when you start using that language, that's when you start believing more so, when you don't start using the language that I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the assumption at the moment. You actually are doing it. You've got the assumption that you're not good enough at what you're doing. Okay, so that will change over time with what you're doing on a weekly basis. So this is where it gets interesting as well, because you don't necessarily need to know how something is going to happen before you allow yourself to believe it's possible. Sometimes you have to believe it's possible and then figure out the how, which is what you're doing, Sue. Okay, you believe that you're going to be successful and it's going to be successful. We are now going through, okay, well, these are the steps that we need to do to get to that place. So here's your second question, and I'd love you to write this one down. If I assumed this was possible for me, what would I do differently? If I assumed this was possible for me, what would I do differently? And just sit with that for a minute. And ask yourself, what would you do differently this week? What would you stop doing? what would you start doing? Who would you need to become a little more courageous around? What decision would you make? And just notice, because we're not talking about changing your whole life overnight. We're talking about one different assumption, creating one different decision. And one different decision can create a completely different direction. And when I say direction, it could be then moving towards a more positive direction, a more aligned direction. And here's something else I want you to think about. Some of our biggest assumptions aren't about what we think we can have. They're about what we think we deserve to have. We might assume success has to be hard. We might assume money has to be earned through exhaustion. We might assume that we need another qualification. We might assume we're too old to start again. We might assume that other people are more confident, more successful, or more capable. What if those aren't facts? What if they're simply assumptions we've carried for a very long time? And what if you get to question them? So now let's come back to where we started. What are you assuming is possible for you? Perhaps an even better question is, what have you assumed is not possible for you? Because that assumption might create a limit that doesn't need to exist. And this week, I want you to notice your assumptions. When you catch yourself saying, I can't, or it's too hard, I'm not ready, people won't, whatever, I don't have, just pause. Notice it. Think about it. And ask yourself, is that a fact? Or is it just an assumption? And then you can ask yourself again, what would I think, choose, or do if I assumed something different? And that's the practice for you for this week. You don't need to change everything. You just need to become aware of the assumptions that are shaping your decisions, because sometimes your next level isn't about learning something new. Sometimes it's about questioning something you've believed for a very long time. And I want to leave you with that. Don't let an old assumption decide your future. You get to question it, you get to choose it, you get to decide what's possible for you. And that's the beauty of this work that we do in understanding your conscious and subconscious mind, because you can change absolutely anything and everything about how you see yourself, what you believe you are worthy of having, what you believe you're worthy of doing. And that's the beauty of it. So has anyone got any questions? Anything coming up for you that you want to ask a question about? No? All good. Well, I hope I've given you something to think about today, because assumptions are huge. They are huge. We're assuming all day, every day. And so it's just being aware of them, being aware of something that we're assuming that's happening in our life, that we can then just go, right, that's not it. I'm going to change it, and I'm going to assume the opposite, or better, or different, whatever it works for you so that you can achieve what you want to achieve.